For years, Britain's rental market looked untouchable. From Manchester to London, landlords ruled, rents exploded, bidding wars raged, and tenants paid the price. But in 2025, that power is slipping fast. Vacancies are rising, incentives are back, and the once bulletproof housing market is cracking. Welcome to the UK Dream, where we expose the truth behind Britain's biggest housing shifts. Today, we're counting down the top 10 UK cities where rent is collapsing in 2025. Stay with us, because what's happening right now could flip the rental market upside down for years to come. Hit subscribe and let's dive in. Bristol has always danced to its own rhythm, a city of culture, creativity and quiet confidence. But beneath the charm of the harbour side and the hum of tech startups, the rental market is beginning to wobble. For years, demand here was relentless. Students, young professionals and London escapees competed for every flat, driving rents higher than even locals thought possible. But in 2025, the rhythm has changed. According to HomeTrack and Zoopla, Bristol's average rent is down roughly 0.5% year on year, a small drop on paper, but a major psychological shift in a city that hadn't seen negative movement in nearly a decade. The reasons run deep. Thousands of new-build flats in Bedminster, Temple Quarter and the city centre came online just as tenant demand softened. Wage growth has stalled, inflation is biting, and renters are making tough choices. Downsizing, moving to satellite towns like Bath or Weston-super-Mare, or simply staying put. Landlords who once had the luxury of choice are now offering incentives that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago: reduced deposits, flexible leases, even rent freezes for longer-term tenants. The once invincible student market is also showing cracks. Universities are reporting lower postgraduate enrollment, and purpose-built student blocks that once filled instantly are now marketing aggressively to locals. For developers who banked on Bristol's endless growth, the math is shifting fast. Higher mortgage rates, rising maintenance costs, and lower yields are eating into profits. Bristol's identity as a mini London made it one of the hottest rental markets of the 2020s. But in 2025, that shine is fading. The city remains vibrant and resilient, but for the first time in years, renters, not landlords, are setting the tempo. Leeds was the North's success story, booming with new jobs, luxury towers, and a confidence that seemed unstoppable. But even here, the rental momentum is faltering. According to HomeTrack, average rents have slipped about 0.6% this year, marking the first decline since the pandemic. It's not dramatic, but in a market used to 5 to 7% annual growth, it's a warning shot. Over the past 4 years, developers transformed the skyline. Tower Point, Victoria Riverside, and the South Bank projects brought thousands of high-end apartments to market. The problem? The demand that was supposed to fill them has slowed. Graduates who once rushed to Leeds are now moving home or sharing to cut costs. Inflation has squeezed disposable income, and the city's major employers, finance, tech, and professional services, have cooled hiring. Landlords who once listed a flat in the morning and had a queue by evening are now waiting weeks. Incentives are creeping in. Free parking, utilities included, even a month's rent off to secure tenants. Meanwhile, older properties in Headingley and Hyde Park are struggling to compete with shiny new builds offering gyms, rooftop terraces, and concierge service at discounted prices. The broader issue is affordability. Rents surged faster than wages, and now the correction is beginning. With student numbers plateauing and new supply flooding in, vacancy rates are quietly ticking up. For investors who stretched thin on buy-to-let mortgages, the pressure is building. Leeds still hums with energy, its nightlife, its music scene, its grit. But 2025 feels different. The cranes are still swinging, but the confidence behind them is not. The city that symbolized sustainable northern growth is discovering that even steady markets can stumble when the balance tips from boom to burden. For decades, London's rental market felt untouchable, a fortress of global demand and endless ambition. But in 2025, even the capital is cracking. Reports from The Guardian reveal rents for new lets are down as much as 3%, the sharpest fall among major UK markets. For a city where landlords once dictated every term, that's a tremor worth noting. From Canary Wharf to Clapham, properties that once sparked bidding wars now linger online. Agents whisper about empty flats in Docklands Towers. Developers offer rent-free weeks. And renters, long the underdogs, are finally negotiating again. The luxury sector has been hit hardest. Overseas tenants have pulled back amid economic uncertainty, while high-end landlords face the double blow of rising interest rates and higher maintenance costs. Meanwhile, the middle market is stretched thin. Wages haven't kept pace with costs, and many professionals are abandoning the city for commuter belts like Reading or Milton Keynes. The pandemic's remote work revolution never fully reversed, leaving a glut of central apartments without their old weekday tenants. Even in traditionally bulletproof areas, Kensington, Islington, Shoreditch, the story is changing. Renewals are down, incentives are up, and new supply is quietly exceeding demand. For smaller landlords reliant on leveraged loans, refinancing at today's rates is brutal. Margins are vanishing, and some are selling rather than sinking. London's skyline still dazzles, but behind the glass, the numbers are slipping. For the first time in years, renters are holding the cards. Whether this is a temporary dip or the start of a long correction remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. The capital's grip on the rental throne has loosened, and 2025 could mark the start of a new era. Sheffield has always been a story of reinvention, from steel to students, industry to innovation. For much of the past decade, it's been one of the North's quiet housing success stories, where rents rose steadily but never excessively. But that balance is now shifting. While official figures are sparse, regional analysts note signs of rental flattening across northern cities. And Sheffield is feeling it too. Developers rushed in over the last few years, building modern apartments in Kelham Island, St. Paul's, and the city centre. The student boom fed the frenzy. Two major universities drove demand that seemed endless. But in 2025, cracks are showing. Graduates are leaving, post-pandemic enrollments are steady but not soaring, and the local economy isn't creating high-paying jobs fast enough to fill the glut of new flats. At the same time, renters are more cautious. Rising energy costs and stagnant wages are forcing them to prioritize essentials over luxury amenities. Landlords who invested heavily in premium refurbishments are discovering that high-spec no longer guarantees quick occupancy. Even family-sized homes in the leafy suburbs are sitting longer on the market. With mortgage rates still elevated, would-be buyers are staying put, and landlords face competition from each other rather than from owner-occupiers. Rent reductions of £50 to £100 per month are becoming common, small cuts that signal larger weakness. Sheffield's strength has always been its affordability. But when that affordability gets stretched by oversupply and falling demand, the equation changes. The cranes along the ring road still rise, but the confidence that drove them is fading. In 2025, Sheffield stands at a crossroads, not collapsing, but clearly cooling, and for the first time in years, the balance between landlords and tenants feels uncertain again. For years, Newcastle embodied the northern rental dream, affordable, energetic, and steadily rising. But by 2025, the chill has set in. The city that once saw queues for every quayside flat is now grappling with softening demand and a growing stockpile of unlet properties. Reports from Reuters suggest a broader slowdown outside London, and Newcastle is part of that story. Developers who banked on endless growth across Osborne and the city centre are now facing hard reality. Too many new builds, not enough tenants. Young professionals are pulling back, squeezed by stagnant wages, student loan repayments, and soaring energy costs. Students, once the city's rental backbone, are opting for cheaper shared houses over luxury studios, leaving entire floors of high-rise blocks half empty. Landlords are reacting the only way they can, cutting prices and adding perks. Free Wi-Fi, no deposit moves, even Amazon vouchers. Anything to keep occupancy up. But even with discounts, demand isn't bouncing back. The city's service and hospitality sectors haven't fully recovered, and the cost of living crisis is pushing renters to smaller towns in the northeast, where prices are lower still. Meanwhile, investors who bought at the peak with variable rate mortgages are feeling the squeeze. Rising interest payments are erasing what little profit remains. Some are selling at a loss, others are simply holding on and hoping the downturn will pass. Newcastle still has its energy, the nightlife, the universities, the unbeatable character. But beneath the buzz, the market is fragile. For the first time in years, to let signs are lingering. The city that once symbolized northern resilience is facing a reckoning of its own. And in 2025, it's clear. Even here, the rental fever has broken. Nottingham's rental story was once one of unstoppable ascent. A compact city with 2 major universities, a thriving student population, and a booming life sciences sector. It seemed immune to slowdown. But in 2025, that story is turning. What began as subtle hesitation in the market has evolved into visible softness. Letting agents are quietly admitting that properties which once vanished in a weekend are now taking weeks to move. The oversupply problem is at the heart of it. In the last 3 years, developers raced to meet surging post-pandemic demand, adding thousands of new apartments in the Island Quarter, Lace Market, and the city centre. But demand has cooled, particularly among graduates and young professionals who were once the driving force. Rising living costs, flat wages, and higher borrowing costs have pushed tenants to reassess what they can afford. According to local agents and rental platforms, rents are dipping modestly, down roughly 1 to 2% in certain postcodes. But incentives tell the bigger story. Landlords are waiving deposits, offering broadband or utilities included, and even allowing short-term rolling contracts to keep tenants from leaving. The student sector, once Nottingham's cash cow, is also showing fatigue. Purpose-built student accommodation has overshot demand, leaving entire blocks with partial occupancy. For small landlords, the math is getting painful. High mortgage rates have crushed yields, and some are exiting altogether. Nottingham still buzzes with culture and opportunity, but beneath the surface, confidence has faded. The cranes that once symbolized growth now signal oversupply. For the first time in years, the city's rental market feels fragile, and 2020 may be the year Nottingham's boom officially runs out of steam. Southampton's skyline has transformed dramatically over the last decade. Gleaming towers, bustling waterfront developments, and endless student housing blocks promising steady returns. But in 2025, the tide is turning. The port city that once attracted investors from across the country is now wrestling with oversupply and softening demand. Developers built at breakneck speed from Ocean Village to the city centre, expecting endless inflows of young professionals and students from Solent and the University of Southampton. But those expectations haven't materialised. With remote work entrenched and student enrolment growth flattening, many of these new units are standing half empty. Local agents report a growing number of landlords offering move-in bonuses, rent-free weeks, reduced deposits, or even grocery vouchers to entice tenants. Average rents are down slightly, by around 1%, but the underlying story is sharper. There's simply more housing than there are renters. Rising costs are compounding the pain. Insurance and maintenance expenses have spiked, while property taxes are eating into margins. Smaller landlords who financed heavily in 2021 or 2022 are finding themselves on the brink. And with interest rates still elevated, refinancing is no longer an escape route. Even the city's proud maritime economy isn't immune. Cruise and logistics companies have slowed hiring, tightening local spending. The ripple effect hits housing first. Southampton still shines. The docks hum, the waterfront sparkles. But the numbers beneath the gloss are slipping. For a city built on movement and flow, the rental market has stalled. In 2025, the tide that lifted Southampton's property boom is finally receding, and landlords are learning just how quickly fortunes can ebb away. For much of the 2020s, Cardiff was a magnet. Young professionals, students, and cross-border commuters all chasing opportunity in one of the UK's most livable cities. But this year, the capital of Wales is showing its first real signs of strain. The latest data hint at stagnation. Rents that once jumped by 7% annually are now flat, even slipping in parts of the city centre and Bay Area. What's driving the change? Oversupply and affordability. Thousands of new units have been delivered since 2021, especially around Central Square and Atlantic Wharf. But demand hasn't kept pace. Many young tenants are feeling the financial squeeze, and others are leaving altogether, trading Cardiff's waterfront lifestyle for cheaper rents in Newport or Bridgend. Landlords are responding with creativity and desperation. Rent reductions, flexible leases, even inclusive utilities have returned to the listings. The student market, once a sure bet, has softened as well. Universities have stabilized enrollment numbers, leaving a glut of modern student apartments with fewer takers. The local economy is steady, but not surging. Public sector hiring freezes, and a slowdown in creative industries have thinned the renter pipeline. Meanwhile, landlords reliant on short-term lets and Airbnb income are pivoting back to long-term tenancies, further flooding supply. Cardiff still has its spirit, the music, the rugby, the Bay Lights. But the confidence that once defined its housing market is fading. For tenants, it's a long-awaited breather. For investors, it's a reckoning. In 2025, the Welsh capital stands as a vivid example of what happens when optimism outruns affordability. The rental boom has cooled, and reality has quietly moved in. Glasgow's transformation over the last decade was remarkable. A surge in regeneration projects, cultural revival, and rising rents that rivaled some southern cities. But in 2025, the momentum is reversing. Rental prices, once galloping ahead, are showing clear signs of fatigue. Local market trackers report small but widespread declines, particularly in the city centre and the West End. The cause is familiar: supply outpacing demand. Thousands of new flats built during the pandemic boom are now hitting the market just as renters are pulling back. Developers banked on endless population growth and a flood of young professionals. But higher costs, job uncertainty, and a stagnant graduate pipeline have flipped the equation. In Finniston and Merchant City, landlords who once fielded bidding wars are now trimming prices. First-month free banners hang on new developments, a sight unseen since the mid-2010s. Short-term let regulations have also redirected properties back to the long-term market, adding more competition. Meanwhile, the economic picture is mixed. The creative and tech sectors that powered Glasgow's resurgence are hiring cautiously, while inflation continues to erode tenants' budgets. Mortgage costs for landlords have soared, pushing many into negative cash flow. Some are offloading properties altogether, while others are riding out the storm with reduced returns. The city's resilience remains undeniable. Its arts, universities, and community energy endure, but the housing market feels fragile. For the first time in years, tenants are negotiating rent cuts and getting them. In 2025, Glasgow stands as a stark reminder that even the most vibrant urban markets can cool fast when growth runs ahead of reality. For years, Manchester was the poster child of the North's property renaissance, a city reborn through cranes, capital, and confidence. But in 2025, that unstoppable rise has hit turbulence. After a decade of record construction, the supply boom has finally overtaken demand. Average rents have dipped by around 2%, with certain luxury segments down even more. For a city once defined by relentless upward movement, that's a shock. Developers filled the skyline with glass and steel, Deansgate, Salford Quays, Ancoats, all built on the promise of infinite tenants. But those tenants are thinning out. Tech layoffs, remote work, and cost of living pressures have cooled the influx of young professionals. Meanwhile, thousands of new units continue to hit the market, flooding a city already saturated with choice. Landlords are scrambling. Rent-free weeks, no deposits, furnished incentives, all back in play. Corporate rentals that once charged premium rates are quietly dropping prices. Investors relying on high leverage are sweating under interest rates that have doubled since their last refinance. Even student demand, long Manchester's safety net, leveling off. The result? Rising vacancies and a growing sense of unease in what was once Britain's hottest rental market. But this is Manchester, resilient, inventive, defiant. The city isn't collapsing, but it's undeniably correcting. For renters, that's good news. After years of runaway prices, power is shifting. For landlords, it's a harsh reminder that no market, no matter how vibrant, is immune to gravity. In 2025, Manchester tells the story of the entire nation, a market at the turning point, where the age of endless growth gives way to the reality of balance. There you have it, the 10 UK cities where the rental market is cracking in 2025. What started as a slowdown is now a real shift. Vacancies rising, deals returning, and renters finally gaining ground. If you're renting, investing, or just watching the market, this matters, because when housing changes, everything changes. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video. The story of UK housing is being rewritten, and you'll want to stay ahead of it. Thanks for watching the UK Dream, where the numbers matter and the horizon is shifting.